Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. I hope you're having a great week. This week, we're going to tackle a very interesting subject. It's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. It's actually a difficult subject to try and get our arms around, because it's just so, the other side of the argument is so pervasive, as you'll see, and I think it'll you have a lot of reactions to this episode, I believe, because it's a very difficult area to navigate successfully. But it's an area that I believe if we navigate it successfully, we'll develop much healthier engagement with this sport, as well as other activities that we engage with in life. If you've had a chance to read some of the book that we just published, Pickleball Therapy, the book, the conversation in there about the lizard brain is particularly relevant to what we're talking about today. I'm not going to dive into the lizard brain too much, but you can, if you've read the book and you understand those pieces that are just hardwired into these hardwired circuits, you'll hear how some of the language that we use to talk about sports, success in sports, emanates from this way that we're wired. And it's here's the thing, right? We're actually just wired this way. So it's very, it's difficult to overcome it, but you can, okay? Because, you're a sentient being, you have a very powerful brain, and you can use that brain to work through some of these words that you'll hear, ideas that'll be expressed that at first blush, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But then once you go a little deeper, you're like, wait a minute, maybe it's not everything that it sounds at the outset. As we dive into the episode, I wanted to let you know that the book is available. It's available right now in a digital delivery, which is a PDF, but you can get an early copy of it. If you'd rather wait for a paperback edition or a Kindle edition, those will be coming out shortly. But highly recommend the book to you. The folks who've read it so far, it's really resonated with them. I think it's having an impact, and we wrote it for that purpose, to help you with your perspective in the sport. And you can go to betterpickleball.com, and there's a link on top, so you can get that if that's something of interest to you. Also want to let you know that we've just added a whole bunch of camps to our camp schedule. We have one in December here in the ones that I'm talking about are in Florida. There's a couple in Arizona in February that CJ's going to do out there. That'll be really good if you're out West Coast or want to visit Arizona or want to see CJ. Those are all three great reasons to sign up for those camps. If you want to come to the East Coast and to Tampa, particularly over the winter months, we have some December, January, February, and March, I believe, dates. If you are if you've been to a camp before, or if you've been a TPS student for a couple of rotations, you can come to the graduate camp if you choose to do so. So we have our Better Pickleball Camp, which is basically covers a ton of pickleball using the pickleball system concepts, and then the graduate camp, which is available if you've been to one of our camps already, because we go deeper. So, you can always keep on going deeper in this sport, as you know. So, all right, let me tee this up for you. This came from one of our students named Craig. Craig, really appreciate you sending this in this is in our Better Pickleball community, our online community. So it's a learning mindset, and it talks about basically, I'll paraphrase it for you, but it's about listening and reading to our views on having a learning mindset and not getting too down on yourself, learning plateaus, expecting not to master new things right away. Don't judge how you're playing based on whether you win or lose, all of those things. And it rang a bell with Craig, right? So that's good. We're making a connection on this. It's registering, which is great. But there's the pushback, right? Not from Craig directly, but from what's around him. So he watched a video on Netflix about the Dallas Cowboys in the early 90s and quarterbacks today. And then basically the documentary was all about the win-win-win mentality that surrounds that world, right? So quotes like, you're no better than your win-loss record says you are. A good loser is a loser. I strive for perfection all the time. I realize I probably will not achieve perfection, but if I fall short, my play will be excellent. Winning is great. Losing sucks. I want my teammates held accountable or called out when they don't play well. And then he says, I'm not advocating that we do any of this or suggesting that your advice is not sound, but he wants to basically, like, how do you reconcile these positions, right? You're hearing from me a message that says, do your best, improve, continue to advance your game. I'm not saying you to throw in the towel when you're playing or go out on the court and say you're going to lose, but you will lose. That's a fact. And if you're playing at level, you're going to lose at a 50-50 proposition. So what we're trying to work is, okay, how do we navigate? How do we blend those two ideas of I'm still going to compete and give my best, but at the same time, I understand that losing is a part of this, and I'm not going to bring myself down too much because of a loss that happens, which again will happen when you play. So, what's interesting about this, and again, I've already thanked you, Craig, but thanks for framing this. This is something that I've been wrestling with for a number of years, trying to find the right way to explain what I would suggest to you is a more balanced, a more rational, a way of engaging with the sport, including how we go into it and then how we respond to it on the other end, right? When we're done with the day of playing or a tournament or anything else that you're doing, once you have your results, how do you deal with those inputs? Missing shots, popping the ball up, all these things, right? How do we deal with that as we navigate through pickleball? And what the quotes that I read to you, the ones that Craig included in his comment, are what's interesting is it's basically how we have, as a society and as individuals have chosen to frame athletic performance, sport, engagement with sport. It's basically shorthand. It's quick hitters, things like a good loser, still a loser, losing sucks, right? And they stick, they're easy. And this is where like the lizard brain latches onto that and goes, yeah, you can't lose. Losing bad, let's move on. And we're hardwired that way, as I mentioned earlier, but we're still sentient beings, right? Possessed with the ability to examine these sound bites, right? To see, if they make sense. So what I'm going to do in this episode is we're going to walk through some different ideas, some different ways of perhaps exposing some of the weaknesses in these types of sound bites, and then, see if these resonate with you, and help you perhaps avoid some of the instant kind of gratification, if you will, or the instant feeling of like, yeah, that makes sense. When we hear something like, basically, it's kind of the Ricky Bobby idea, right? Either your first place or your last place. Those are the two choices, which, there's another one that I've heard that says basically like, like second place is still a loser basically in the whole tournament because you didn't win, right? So by definition, you're a loser, which I'm going to get to that in a little bit when we talk about the baseball this season, because I was going to include it in the riff, but I decided to bake it into the episode itself, but we'll get to that in a second. So let's talk about, first, let's look at this thing, right? Let's look at the phrases in terms of, does saying or thinking these words, does it help you, right? And there's a natural suggestion in here, and Craig intimates this in his comment, which is basically that it must help because the winners are saying it, right? So the successful quarterback, the successful team, the successful player is saying, winning is what it, first or last, right? I got to win basically. So it must work, right? But think about that for a second. What do you think the losing team in those contests said to themselves? What do you think the losing player in a tennis match or in a pickleball match or in a contest said to him or herself? Probably the same words, same exact words, right? This is not exclusive to like the winners are saying these things. They're all saying these things. It just happens that some of those are winning because you're going to have a winner and a loser. So if both the winner and the loser are saying like abracadabra, and then the winner wins, it doesn't mean that abracadabra was the key to the winner winning, because the loser also said abracadabra. So there's no real relationship between the words that are being said and the results the results that we're getting. So, when both the winner and the loser are saying the same thing, then, we probably shouldn't draw any kind of causal connection between this type of mentality, these type of words, and the success of one of the sides. Because again, the other side, the losing side, said the exact same thing. So that's one way of maybe thinking about this in terms of because we're assigning value to these words, because they're being shared with us by the winner. But the loser said the same thing. So probably don't have the effect that we think it does. So next thing, second, is what do the words really say, right? What are we really saying when we say these things? So there's that one saying, you're no better than your win-loss record says you are. Now, this is classical circular reasoning. Okay. Now, a win-loss record, so I've won, 20 games and lost 5 games or whatever it is, right? Is a data set. So it's fact. It's just a thing, right? I've won this many and lost this many. So to say, that your record cannot be better or worse than whatever the numbers are, not really saying anything, right? It's just circular. But here's the tricky part. Here's where I think it gets a little bit, it can be, it's what we're interpreting it, right? So what we're saying is we're reading into it. We're not reading record, right? Which is what it says. You're no better than your win-loss record. We're reading it as we, as humans, as athletes, are no better than our win-loss record. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't plan on reducing my existence on this planet or my engagement with the sport of pickleball into a data set of wins and losses. Particularly not if you understand the reality of the sport at pretty much every level of play, except at the extreme top or extreme bottom, I guess, but let's focus on extreme top because that's what we're talking about here. But, not talking about here, but at most levels of play, it's 50-50. So you should have eventually, 2,022 wins and 1,999 losses, roughly 50-50, right? Or maybe it's the other way around. Still going to be 50-50 roughly. So it's no reason to define yourself based on this 50-50. Doesn't make any sense. And so the first thing is to say you're definitely a better person than just a number in terms of wins and losses in pickleball. That doesn't define you. And it doesn't even define you as a pickleball player. So, what I do this for a second, right? Think for a second about the 50th best pro in pickleball, man or woman, right? Pick him or her. 50th best pro on the tour. Okay. Now, is that player an amazing pickleball player? Just an outstanding pickleball athlete? I think so, right? They're amazing, an amazing pickleball player. Now, their pro record is not going to be great. Their pro record, their PPA Tour tournament record, is probably going to be under 50% wins. Probably. Does that make them not a good pickleball player? I mean, that's just nonsense, right? That the 50th best pickleball player on the planet is not a good pickleball player because they have a losing record doesn't make any sense to me. So, and this kind of leads into the third one, which is, are we living in an environment now? We're going to set ourselves up for an environment where satisfaction is reserved for one player. Now, you can look at it like, one player in the world, if you want to look at it that way, because no matter who you are, there's a better player than you, unless your name is Ben Johns as a male player or Annalie Waters as a female player. There's some sub niches in singles and stuff, but in doubles, unless your name is one of those two names, they're better players than you. Okay. And so that's a world in which there's only one player on the men's side and one player on the women's side that can look in the mirror and go like, I am what my win-loss record says, the best. Right. And even if you look at it like in terms of your community or your tournaments and stuff like that, I mean, it's just such a limiting way of playing and engaging with the sport, I would say, where there has to be only one. It's either I win everything or there's a problem, I guess, right? There's a deficiency in me and my pickleball. And here's where I wanted to talk a little bit about baseball, because I happen to be following the Mariners in the playoffs, not because I'm a big baseball fan, but a good friend of mine, Jim Ramsey, who's the data analyst at the PPA. He and I were chatting about pickleball statistics and things like that. And so I knew his background was in doing baseball statistics. So I just asked him, it was the beginning of the playoffs. I'm like, who you got? And he's like, he did say the Dodgers are probably going to be the team to beat. So he may still be right about that. But then I asked him, well, okay, give me like he goes, you know what? I think the Mariners. He goes, the Mariners are an interesting story based on their history, based on Cal, based on all these things. And so they made it to they had some tough battles, and they made it through to the conference series, I think it's called in baseball. And they lost in the deciding seventh game against the Toronto Blue Jays, who rolled the New York Yankees, historically powerhouse team. So tough, and they lost like 4-3 in the seventh game, right? That's about as good as it gets if you think about it, right? Go to 7 games, you have to play them at home because they had a better record during the season, and you lose 4-3 in their home in the 7th game, and you get knocked out. And the way that in the interview with the catcher Cal was, that it was a failure, and that's unfortunate. It doesn't mean you have to be happy about not. You wanted to win, right? And you were doing your best to try and win that game, as were the Blue Jays. And it didn't, the cookie didn't crumble in that way in that game. And so you lost 4-3 against a very good team. And I think feeling it being a failure to me it's unfortunate because it robs the player of a bigger perspective of what happened. Again, doesn't mean you have to be like, I got everything I wanted, but can't we have, like, going back to like the bowl of ice cream, that kind of idea, man, you made it. You're one of 4 teams left standing at the end of the season. Every other team is at home watching you, I guess, or doing whatever they're doing, right? So you're one of 4 teams, actually 3 teams at that stage, because the Dodgers already eliminated, I think it was the Brewers. So you had the two teams left in your conference that you were playing, you and the Blue Jays, and you lose in the 7th game. I mean, that's phenomenal. Phenomenal applause to you for your great season and a great playoff. But again, like, capping that as a failure, to me, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that these young athletes are trained to process that way, because it doesn't change anything. Right? It's not like if he understood things, had a little better perspective, a little broader perspective. It's not like they're not going to play their hearts out. It's not like they're not going to do their best to win. But it at the moment of losing that game, those athletes enter in a better position to process that information more constructively and not feel so negative about what was objectively a great season for him and the team. So anyway, that's just a better way of thinking about it than just reserving it for this idea that there's only one player who's entitled to like feel good about themselves because they're the only ones that I guess nobody can beat. So let's go back a minute to the words meaning something and talk about winning is great. Losing, I think it's losing sucks or losing still sucks. Like, think about that for a second too, right? Sounds awesome. Winning is great, losing sucks. But what are we talking about, right? Take a 4-5 team against a 3-5 team, and the 4-5 team wins. Is that winning great and losing sucking? Winning great for the 4-5 team, losing sucking for the 3-5 team? I think the answer is no on both sides, right? So it just doesn't really add anything. And then you go back to the 50-50 win-loss ratio. And if you have this idea that winning is great and losing sucks, then you're going to feel great half the time and suck half the time, I guess. I mean, that's just not a way that I want to engage in the sport. And I don't think that really makes sense if you think about it. And why not instead frame your performance, how you played, based on how you played? Not the results, but how you played. Did you give your best? Did you try your best when you were playing out there, right? That doesn't mean you made every shot. That's nonsense, because even the best players miss a lot of shots. It's just, instead of looking at it like I won, so I feel good, I lose, so I feel bad, it's I played to my ability and how I felt that day and everything else, as, in within a range that I'm good with, whatever the results are, no big deal. As opposed to pinning so much on the results. Because again, winning's great, losing sucks doesn't really add anything to the conversation from my perspective, other than just sounding cool, in a little soundbite. And then fifth, I want to talk about the words here. We get some conflation going on here. And I want to use one in particular here. about teammate accountability. So the phrase was, I want my teammates, quote, held accountable or, quote, called out when they don't play well. So I want my teammates held accountable or called out when they don't play well. Now, to me, what this means, and here's what I think this means, and what it should mean, even if it doesn't, is I want my teammates to give their all, right? I want my teammate to give their best effort in that contest. I'm going to give my best effort. I want my teammate to do so, whether we're playing on a 5-person basketball team, 11-person football side, 9 players, I'm pretty sure, on baseball, or 2 players in a doubles pickleball court, right? And as long as the effort is there, it's not the result, guys. And it shouldn't be the result, because your partner is going to miss shots and you are going to miss shots. So if you evaluate it based on you missed a shot, then it's not going to be constructive. If you frame it based on, hey, you didn't even go for the shot, you didn't even go for the ball, then that's a different conversation. I'll give you one example. There are times when you'll see players who, there's a ball that's popped up by a teammate, and one of the partner will just give up. Will basically put their paddle down or turn around. Okay, you want to have a word with your partner then? I have no problem with that. But if the ball's popped up and your partner's trying their best to dig it out and they don't dig it out or they don't control it, what's their complaint about? Even if there's you generate a pop-up by your opponent and your partner goes to get it and just misses the shot, you think they were trying to miss the shot? Right? Nothing to get upset about there. And that's where there's a conflation between, I want my teammates held accountable or called out when they don't play well. What we're talking about there is the effort given, not the result. And that's where the conflation comes in. And what I wrote down here, a note that I wrote down here, is that if you're playing in a competitive setting, so you signed up for a tournament, you've agreed to play with someone in a tournament or in a league, something serious like that, then you and your partner should each expect the other to give your best, because you've signed up for that. I don't think it's the same standard when you're an open player, rec player, having a nice time on the pickleball court. I think that's a different world. But if you're playing competitively and you've agreed to do it, right? You've said, I'll sign up for a tournament with you. Then I think it's reasonable for your partner to expect the best of you, to give your best, and for you to expect them to give their best. So I think that's pretty reasonable, but it's not based on results again or winning the rallies. And this now gets us to this proper framing that I want, that I think is a better way to couch your thinking about yourself as a player, rather than in getting away from this, winning is great, losing sucks, or any of those types of ideas, is that the way that an athlete at any level, whether at your level or at the highest pro level, succeeds is through their process. It's not because of some magic words that they say or repeat, like abracadabra or, I'm going to win or whatever. That's not how the athletes ultimately are successful. They're successful because of process. They're successful because they know how to do the things that are necessary to play their sport and perform in their arena well. And the better they get at that process, the better they perform, and the better they perform, the higher the chance that they win. And so, like, there was Kobe Bryant was, one of the best basketball players of all time. And there was this thing called the Mamba mentality. They call him the Black Mamba. And so the Mamba mentality was like, basically like, he's a killer. He's he's getting the zone and he does his thing and whatever. But here's the thing. The Mamba mentality wasn't just like some words that he repeated to himself and got into the zone or something like that. The Mamba mentality was about him getting up at 4:00 in the morning, going to the gym and practicing harder than any other player on the team, even when he was the star of the team. That's how he developed the Mamba mentality, because he had thrown up so many shots that he knew that when he threw up the shot the way he wanted to throw it up, it was going to go in. Had a high chance of going in. That's how he performed at a high level, not because of some voodoo words that he was uttering to himself. That doesn't make any sense, right? And so process and giving your best, it's how you improve, right? It's through process and just trying your hardest, giving your best. That's how you improve. And that's how you give yourself the best chance for success when you're out there on the pickleball court. And if you go out there and you give your best and you still lose, that does not suck. That is just a natural part of the sport that you have chosen to play, the sport that you've chosen to fall in love with, and it's frankly the part of any sport that's competitive in nature that you will ever play. And it is nothing more than that, and it's nothing less than that. It's simply you giving your best, and winning or losing is the result of that process, period, full stop. So hopefully this helps Craig and helps you better process this kind of information that you'll receive from society. There's really, it's unavoidable. It's out there. It's, the most of the books that I see about the mental side of not just pickleball, the mental side of sport. Most of the words that you hear, like the ones that Craig shared with us from that Netflix documentary, are all couched in terms of, we congratulate you if you won. We don't have anything to say to you, or you should feel disappointed or failure, right, if you lose. And there's no other option. I believe that as, again, sentient human beings with rational minds, we can find a way to navigate sport that is healthier for you, more constructive, and does not take away from your competitive fire, your wanting to give it all and to do the best you can every time you step out on the pickleball court. I know we went a little bit long on this podcast, but this is a subject that merited some additional discussion, some additional consideration. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And remember to check out the book if you're so inclined. Go to betterpickleball.com. We'll put a link down in the show notes too, but if you go to betterpickleball.com, you'll see it up at the top. I believe there's a button you can click on there. And remember to rate and review the podcast if you have a moment. And as always, share it with your friends, because if you enjoyed the podcast, they probably will too. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you on the next episode of Pickleball Therapy. Be well.